I'm gonna state the obvious. AAA gaming kinda sucks right now. I gotta shell out $80 to play a game that, let's be honest, is basically just a reskin of last year's games with new content comparable to that of a new Fortnite season. And I have to pay, let me repeat, $80. I can't believe I'm saying this, but back in my day, those games were only $60. However, if you're like me, there is a solution to this problem. Indies. Basically, these games are passion projects made by an individual or a small studio. And surprise, surprise, they are a fraction of the price while coming with often more content than Activision or EA's yearly update. These cheap, low-budget, independent bundles of joy have taken over my library to the point where the last AAA game I bought was Super Smash Bros. In 2018. So my first real console was a Nintendo Switch, and like many others, I got Breath of the Wild bundled in with it, which I played the fuck out of. But however fun that game might be, I did eventually get bored of it. So I turned to indies to keep me entertained, and boy, they did not disappoint. I played Hollow Knight, The Adventure Pals, Hue, and more, igniting my love for indies and saving me a good chunk of cash along the way. When I moved to Steam and started with a potato PC, I stuck with my indies, where I played Dead Cells, Celeste, Stardew Valley, Hades, and way more. Point being, I've played a lot of indies and I love them to death. But over the last year, I've mostly stopped playing them. I guess I just got busy with school and life in general. Any free time I did have, I played multiplayer games with friends. And while this was fun, I really felt like I fell out of touch with this subsection of games I so dearly loved. So when the Game Awards came out with their nominees for Best Indie and I hadn't played any of them, I knew something had to be done. So I waited for them to go on sale, set aside a whole week, sat down and played all 5 of them in 7 days in an attempt to rekindle my passion for these games and make a nice video out of it along the way. The first game I decided to pick up was Cult of the Lamb. The best thing I could compare this game to is a mix of the addictive hack and slash dungeon battling of Hades mixed in with the managing of a camp and its people, reminiscent of Stardew Valley or The Sims. I'm glad that didn't take as long to complete as Hades though. I managed to finish this game in a quite manageable 9 hours, which is great for the challenge, but maybe not as great for the average player. Given I didn't do the true ending, didn't do many of the side quests, and only got about half the achievements, I do still feel like this game could have been a little longer or a bit more difficult to make the existing content last a bit longer. Either way, this game is super fun. Although the combat is great, the cult system is definitely the highlight. Managing your cult's faith and living conditions, using these weird rituals to assure your animal friends that they are safe is so cool. I especially enjoyed the crown doctrines. Basically, these are unlockable paths that have you choose between 2 strategic choices for your cults. This can be a trait where they like you more if nobody's in prison, or a ritual where you can appoint a follower to cosplay as the IRS. I liked these because they change up the way the game is played every time instead of just giving numerical buffs, which always kept it interesting and exciting. The devotion system, however, did feel a bit tedious. Maybe it was because I kept sending my followers to pray, but at a certain point I started unlocking random stuff just because I could, and I had an abundance of devotion. Now that I think of it, I actually felt this way with quite a few resources in the game. I was never short on gold, and save from the very beginning, there was always a surplus of wood and stone, making all the buildings quite easy to unlock. Enough about that, let's move on to the combat. As I already touched on before, this game is hack and slash, procedurally generated, weapon modifying, roguelike fighting. You start the round by picking up your starter weapons and then battle through randomly generated rooms filled with diverse enemies. Along the way, you might find torrent cards, which give unique temporary buffs to your character. After clearing and finding the exit to the level, you are presented with this map labeled using icons, where you can choose where you want to go. Some levels are strictly fighting, while others act as rest points, allowing you to buy from shops, farm natural resources, or talk to an NPC. At the end of each map, you have to fight a boss, and when defeated, you can return back to your cult with all the resources you've collected, where you can of course upgrade yourself to be more powerful. The small yet deep arsenal of tools is enough to be able to reasonably avoid most damage and deal counter damage. The weapon variety is also excellent. After unlocking a few from the sermon, there are a ton of status effects that your weapons could have, and no run ever felt exactly the same or boring. which made the combat so much more enjoyable. One thing that I definitely have to applaud this game for is its linear progression even with roguelike freedom. A big complaint with most roguelites like this one is that they have a very weird skill progression chart, where the game becomes easier and easier as time goes on while your skill gets better and better. Code of the Lamb circumvents this by having 4 areas unlock after each other, with all of them being more and more difficult to match your increasing power, keeping the game at a more or less constant difficulty. It seems like an easy fix, and it is, but it is definitely very effective and something that more roguelikes should start doing. Also, one more thing, is it just me, or are these unlockable fleeces absolutely terrible? Like, the Deceased Heart one is okay strictly for combat, and the Tarot one is situational, but for the rest, they all suck. And it's even worse because they require a specific collectible to unlock from multiple side quests, and if you don't like any of the fleeces, the collectible can't be used anywhere else, which I definitely found disappointing in my run. Overall, this game is still great and is a guaranteed good time. I'd recommend it to anyone. Okay, so Sifu. First, I have to get something out of the way. When I first started playing, for some reason, the opening level was giving me so much trouble that I turned down the difficulty from medium to easy. The problem is, after that, you can't turn it back up again. So when I started to understand the game, I felt that I made it too easy, but I couldn't turn the difficulty back up. So yeah, maybe that's why it only took me about 4 hours to finish the whole game. Weirdly, it actually felt a lot longer. All the levels were unique, the bosses were constantly changing, and this beautiful environment varied vastly. Oh my god, can we talk about how this game looks for a sec? I mean, it's beautiful, not only in cutscenes, but just in gameplay as well. Everything is so wonderfully shaded, and the HUD is so discreet and minimalist, letting the game's beautiful areas just speak for themselves. But I didn't like all of it. See, the game's main mechanic is whenever you die, you can use XP to unlock new moves and get reborn just a year older. A lot of these moves are really cool, but the shame is I never used most of them. My arsenal consisted mostly of dodge, parry, heavy attack combo, and light attack combo. I did try to use some new skills, but every time I tried, I would just instantly get damage. This made the regular gameplay kinda tedious, especially when you get to one of these beefy enemies and you have to lay into them for like 30 seconds straight to take them down. Overall, I did enjoy Sifu much more than I was expecting, and I'm glad I gave it a chance. The game is beautiful, fun, and satisfying, while also being nice and short, which works for the game, and I can definitely appreciate considering I still have 3 more games to play this week. The third game I played was Tunic, and it was an experience. So Tunic is an isometric adventure game, basically being one big homage to early Zelda titles. Except we have a cute fox as the protagonist. The game is so committed to the style that the game's tutorial unlocks as you progress through in the form of a mostly unintelligible retro game manual, which has little hints of secret moves, abilities, and more. The manual was so charming that picking up one of these new pages was often the highlight of my session. I mean, look at them! The pages are unique and creative, complete with pen scribbles giving the player additional hints, printing errors, and coffee stains adding to realism. These cute little drawings visually showing how the game works is so cool and just fits this game perfectly. Although, as you can imagine, switching back to an unreadable game manual does have its downsides. Often the manual's so vague that you could easily miss core gameplay elements. For example, I was getting so mad at the quarry and how it obscured vision and took away my health for like 2 hours until I saw in a YouTube video that this upgrade I already had could completely negate that. And yes, when I checked the manual, there is a little bit about it, but it's so hidden that I wouldn't be surprised if many players who didn't want to use a tutorial got stuck and eventually just tried to brute force on 1 HP through this otherwise not too difficult area. With the progression being mostly linear and the game not holding your hand anywhere, I often found myself stuck because I missed the small path that I was supposed to be on, leaving me wandering around the map until I eventually stumbled upon the entrance to the next area that I missed the first time. This happened to me a few times and was extremely frustrating, and once again, with the benefit of hindsight, the manual was hinting towards the right area. But again, it's just as vague as before, and I wouldn't be surprised if many other players encountered the exact same thing. I would certainly say that the best part of Tunic is the exploration. The world is riddled with hidden passages, secrets, and fun little surprises. Due to the game's forced isometric angle, these secrets can be found behind any corner, rock, or waterfall. And it's always rewarding when you find some items because damn, this game is difficult, and any upgrade is a welcome gift. The world is full of diverse zones, with unique enemies and new rewards to reap. I don't want to say much more when it comes to exploration, because you should really experience this game for yourself, but I'll just say that there is enough content in this game to last me 36 hours? Holy okay, on to the combat. I'm gonna be blunt, I didn't love it. It's clear this game was built with controllers in mind, and PC controls were an afterthought. Like how the game doesn't use the mouse at all, or that the potion key is P, which yeah, P for potion, but it's placed really inconveniently. And since I couldn't find my controller, and I didn't exactly have a lot of time, I tried to use the original controls for most of my run. But at a certain point, I just got so frustrated and uncomfortable that I snapped and rebinded all of them. My attack and shield are now the way more intuitive left and right mouse button, my potion is E, and my secondary items are my side mouse buttons, which I get not everybody has, but these controls were so much more comfortable, and I instantly started to play better. If you do plan on playing on mouse and keyboard, don't even bother with the original controls, just switch them immediately like I should have done. Shit, wait, I was talking about the combat. Okay, hold on. The combat is fine. It's functional, responsive enough, and most deaths weren't completely unfair. It's just that the combat wasn't fluid. You were often locked into a combo animation while seeing that you were about to get attacked and not being able to roll away. In the game world, it makes sense that this small little fox doesn't have enough strength to wield a sword, many magic artifacts, and the ability to roll and sprint away effortlessly, but gameplay-wise, it just got really jarring. Don't get me wrong, the bosses are entirely beatable with some skill, and the combat is far from bad. Maybe I'm just bad at the game. At one point, I got so frustrated at the final boss that I technically didn't beat it before the challenge ended. Alright, the next game I played was Stray. And after 3 games of action-filled balls-to-the-walls combat, it was nice to just play as a cat and solve some puzzles for once. This game is about a stray cat's mission in a post-apocalyptic world inhabited by humanoid robots to get outside and be reunited with friends. Along the way, you'll meet this companion bot that lets you talk to robots. You'll also meet 3 friends who call themselves outsiders, also all trying to escape, and they each help you on your adventure. First off, this game, like all the others on this list, is absolutely beautiful. I had to turn down all my graphics settings to low so my computer could stop yelling at me, and I was still blown away by the beauty of these levels. Although the game is quite short, having completed it in only a few hours, I still felt like I'd gone through a complete and diverse journey by the end. It's clear that this game was developed for the masses, so it's quite easy and handholdy, but I don't think it really hindered the experience too much. My 2 favorite levels by far were the slums and the city, because this is where the game really shines. A lot of the other levels are fun, but what these 2 in particular do better than any other level is verticality. Because you could jump onto almost anything, you can explore the height of a level just as much as the ground. This allows for levels to be small and tight, filled with a ton of detail and interactions, while still being very explorable, interesting, and filled with content. These places are also packed with fun NPCs to meet and do quests with, like this guy who'll give you a mixtape if you take down all the cameras. It just really adds a lot to the game. There's also very little combat in Stray. It's mostly running away from a few enemies long enough to get to the next area. This makes the game mechanically quite easy, and none of the puzzles are really difficult either, but they have enough problem solving and hints for them still to be satisfying. Overall, I have nothing particularly bad to say about Stray. Most of the levels are really fun, and the game is paced excellently. It's not an unforgettable tear-jerking experience, but it does have some genuine emotion. And I mean, come on, look at the cat, she's so cute. And that brings us to Neon White. Except the challenge was already over. My 7 days were up. I couldn't finish the games on time. I failed. But that wasn't really what this challenge was about. It wasn't about beating these games in an arbitrary time period. It was about playing them and about experiencing these joys again, and I think I accomplished that. Through this challenge, I played through games I never even knew existed. Games that I never would have found, and even if I found them, I never would have bought them. This challenge made me put aside my skepticism and just play. And the time restraint wasn't about a stupid challenge, it was about committing and actually finishing these games rather than have them rot away in my library after not being totally engrossed after 30 minutes. I did eventually play Neon White, and I really liked it. And while I am disappointed that I couldn't finish it within the week, the real goal of this challenge was reached, and I now love indies again. Geez, enough with the soppy speeches, I was just being dramatic. Let's get to what a lot of you are probably still here for. Which of these games was the best? And does it match up with the Game Awards decision? In last place, I have reluctantly put Cult of the Lamb. Now, I still love this game and would recommend it to anyone, but it simply didn't have the same impact on me as some of the others. And yes, it is still a great action-adventure sims like roguelites, but my main issue that I complained about originally was its length. And after playing the rest of these games, two of which were shorter than it, I realized it was more of an issue with pacing. The game got kind of repetitive really quick, holding a sermon every day, collecting devotion, and running through the dungeon. It made time go by so much quicker. In conclusion, I would still recommend picking up this game when it next goes on sale. Even more so than some of the others on this list, because I can't think of anyone who wouldn't enjoy this game. And while I was satisfied, I wasn't blown away. It also doesn't help that this game lives in a genre to be compared with some of the best games of the past year. So they've got big shoes to fill. But anyway, on to the next game. In fourth place, I put Tunic. I originally wanted to put this in last, but it felt unfair to dump a game just because I found it really hard. The truth is that Tunic is very punishing, but under the extreme difficulty, there's such a charm. The world, the exploration, the creativity, and most of all, the manual. Okay, maybe it's because I didn't grow up in an era where manuals were necessary, but if it wasn't for these collectible pages, I genuinely think Tunic would end up in last place. But the puzzle and deciphering of the manual with these fun pictures and detail just made the game so much more interesting and whimsical, and it really felt like you were importing a foreign game onto your computer that's only available in Japan or something. The vibe truly saved this game. In third place, I'll have to go Sifu. I was not expecting to like this game much at all. It's very different from what I'd usually buy, but when I started playing, I quickly found myself engrossed in its levels. They were perfectly paced, having upgrade stations at many points throughout the run, and mini-bosses scattered throughout to keep you on your toes. While Sifu doesn't have a ton of content, I can guarantee that all the content that is in there is unique, interesting, varied, and a ton of fun. The downsides, as I described in my initial review, is that the combat system is quite rigid, and not every move feels equal. The game doesn't exactly encourage you to try out new moves. Regardless of this, I still really like Sifu, and look forward to replaying it on regular difficulty this time. And for my runner-up, I have selected, drumroll please, Neon White. I hadn't talked about it so far because I hadn't played it, but after trying it out, I can confirm that Neon White is excellent. The core gameplay loop where you have to beat a level multiple times, trying to get the fastest time you could, is so fun and rewarding that you can get hooked for hours trying to pull off one obscure shortcut, and suddenly you start to feel like an actual speedrunner. Oh yeah, that's the gimmick of the game. You just gotta go fast. Outside of the main fun, the next biggest thing is the dialogue, and there's a lot of it. It sucks because some of the dialogue is so not funny, just humorous. But you have to click through so many text boxes to get there. It's two-sided as well, because you can't just cut out a chunk of the dialogue because then it would lose a ton of charm. It's just a nitpick, but the dialogue could really do with being a bit shorter. Other than that, you have the side quests, which are quite fun, but yeah, this game is excellent and I would highly recommend it. Okay, that brings us to our winner, Stray. I didn't want to agree with the Game Awards, but man, this game is so good. The world building, puzzles, areas, chapters, this game is just so much fun. Add a very cute cat in the mix and you've got a #1 pick. I'm not going to say much more because most people have already clicked off, but if you ever get the chance to play this game when it goes on Game Pass or something, do. In fact, do that for every game on this list. Play all of them, they're all great. Not sure about value, but like I said, if it goes on Game Pass, these are great recommendations. So in the end, did this rekindle my love for indies? Well, yes. I've already bought like 4 more during the sale, and I'm playing through some old ones that have been sitting in my shelf for quite a while. Although I'm not going to be playing for 6 hours a day like I was for this week, I'm definitely going to start playing through some when I'm bored or simply just don't have much else to do. And I think that's probably the best outcome I could have asked for. Now excuse me, I have to disappear for a year again and completely switch genres, so I will see ya.